Do you have a Bible? If you do, please open it up to Daniel chapter 7. And last week, I shared with you, a couple of weeks, I shared with you, because I wanted you to know for sure that what Jesus said about the end times was that the things that we customarily believe mark the end times are not the things that mark the end times. Not false prophets, not wars, rumors of wars, not kingdom rising up against another kingdom. It is not famines, pestilences, and earthquakes. Those are the birth pangs. Those are the times of sorrows. And this is going to go on through the whole time. So now we'll see them increase, but those are not the markers. So then the question we have to ask ourselves is that, did God leave us without any insight whatsoever? Is there some way that we might have an opportunity to know, are we getting closer? Are we not getting closer? Or where are we at? Is there some way to do that? And Jesus said this. He said the day and the hour, nobody really knows. But he did say this. He said, you should not have this day to catch you unaware. There are clearly some things, he said, that you should know the times and the seasons. He did not say you should know the signs, but the times. So there's an atmosphere that's out there, and we can kind of pick out that. The challenge of doing biblical prophecy is today, I've got to tell you what I need to tell you so that I can tell you what I need to tell you. Okay, are y'all totally familiar with Daniel chapter 7? Probably not. Daniel chapter 2? Probably not. Chapter 8, chapter 9? Probably not. And there's a lot of stuff in there that today I have to tell you so that next week I can tell you what it means. Or I should say it this way. I can tell you how it applies to us today. It's a teaching lesson today, and I got to put a lot of information in you, okay? I got to put some information in you, give you some clarity about some stuff, and it's going to come from the book of Daniel. But whenever I tell you this stuff, if that's only the place that I leave it, you'll go and say, okay, well, I kind of have an idea of what Daniel says, but you won't know, how does it apply to us today? How does it apply to America today? How does it apply to the world today? Does it apply? Is there anything that tells us that these things might be happening right now? And so in order to do that, I'm going to have to share some things, big things, and shrink them down and give you sort of a 30,000-foot view. I already told you that on June the 5th, Joe is going to be teaching a class in here on Sunday nights on the book of Revelation and surrounding issues where he can go a little bit deeper and a little bit more in detail. But I'm going to try to give you kind of an overview so that you can grasp where we're going, okay? Let me quickly tell you where I'm at. In the book of Daniel, there are dreams and visions that Daniel has. These dreams and visions look different. In chapter 2, he talks about a big statue made of different metals. In chapter 7, he talks about beasts coming up out of the sea. In chapter 8, he talks about a goat with horns on its head. And to look at them, you would think, okay, here's a vision of a man, here's a vision of beast, and here's a vision of goats. The truth of the matter is they are all three visions of the same thing, but they are progressively giving more detail as to what's going on in these particular things. So we have to know what these visions are, and I've got to give you some explanation. And I hope you're going to catch it. The notes are online. They're probably more than they can get on the screen, and they're already having a hard time following me. So, and that's my fault. But nonetheless, I need to give you a bunch of stuff, okay? So in doing that, I want to read from from Daniel chapter 7, beginning in verse 15, and I want you to see where Daniel put his emphasis. I want you to see what bothered Daniel. And I've got to tell you something about Daniel. Daniel is one of God's chosen men, and this stuff petrified him. I mean, it literally, it's hard to see it without really digging deep into the original languages, but basically Daniel says, I've almost passed out paying attention to this stuff. It has terrified my soul to see what's actually getting ready to happen. And so in the process of having these visions, one was a dream from Nebuchadnezzar that he interpreted, and then he had a vision and another vision, a vision in chapter 7, chapter 8. And as he's trying to express these visions and then share what it's about in chapter 9, there's a lot to be said, but I'm going to do the best I can to try to make sure that you are not, just totally and completely confused. I hope that you're not. All right? So let's at least read it. And this is Daniel in the middle of a vision. I'm cutting out a piece right in the middle of the vision of the beast coming out of the ocean. And I want you to see where Daniel focuses his attention. Okay? So read with me. Daniel says, I was grieved in my spirit within my body, and the visions of my head troubled me. I came near to one of those who stood by, and these are angels that are sharing this, and asked him the truth of all of this vision I just saw of the beast coming out of the sea. What is the truth of all this? So he told me, and he made known to me the interpretation of these things. He said, those great beasts which are four kings which arise out of the earth. But the saints of the Most High shall receive the kingdom and possess the kingdom forever, even forever and ever. Verse 19 and 20 are very specific of Daniel pointing at something. He said, then I wish to know about the fourth beast. Now he's seen a vision of four, but he's not even concerned about the first three. He says, I want to know about this fourth beast, which is different from all the others, exceedingly dreadful, with its teeth of iron and nails of bronze, which devoured, broke in pieces, and trampled the residue with its feet. That's a significant vision. This fourth beast is so devastating that it busts things up, breaks them into pieces, consumes some things, and whatever might be left, he tramples underfoot. So it speaks of a thorough destruction. And he says, and the 10 horns that were on its head, and the other horn which came up, before which 3 fell, namely that horn which had eyes and a mouth which spoke pompous words, whose appearance was greater than his fellows. Daniel says, I need to know about this fourth kingdom. I need to know about these 10 horns. I really want to know about that little horn that is there. What's that all about? He says, I was watching, and that same horn, that little one, that same horn was making war against the saints and prevailing against them. That is, until the Ancient of Days came and a judgment was made in favor of the saints of the Most High. Praise the Lord for that. And the time came for the saints to possess the kingdom. So this all went on until a time when God decided the saints were ready to possess that kingdom. But this battle is going on. And then he says, the fourth beast is going to be a fourth kingdom on the earth, which shall be different from all of the other kingdoms and shall devour. Listen to what he says. This fourth kingdom is going to devour the whole earth, trample it, and break it into pieces. The 10 horns are the 10 kings who shall arise from this kingdom. And another shall arise after them. He shall be different from the first ones, and shall subdue 3 kings. He shall speak pompous words against the Most High. He shall persecute the saints of the Most High, and shall intend to change times and law. Then the saints shall be given into his hand for a time and times and a half time. That's for another day. But I want you to see that Daniel has a very significant concern over this fourth beast, this fourth kingdom. So I've entitled this message today, The Rise of the Fourth Kingdom. When God gets ready to do something in the world, he does sometimes, but he rarely does it himself. He almost always finds something or someone to do it for him. Whether it is Moses on a mountain, or whether it happens to be Nebuchadnezzar, a wicked king, Cyrus, Darius, Belshazzar, these kings that he chose to use. God used Herod to get Jesus, a wicked king used Herod to get Jesus to Egypt. God used Jesus to pay for your sin, used the resurrection to give you brand new life. He used Pontius Pilate to get Jesus to the cross. And so there's these things that go on where you have to understand in the terms of prophecy that God is in charge of the whole world, and He will use every ounce of the world to make His bidding made possible. He used Pharaoh. He used Pharaoh to incubate and expand the nation of Israel in Egypt, and then used Moses to come to deliver. So God says, I will use anybody. They're all mine. I can do what I want. And what we're learning here in the book of Daniel, because God told Daniel very specific what was going on, He said, I'm going to use this fourth kingdom to do something. And I want you to know what it is that I'm going to do. Now, in order to understand appropriately biblical prophecy, you need to understand two major things. Number one, you have to understand that God Himself has a plan, and His plan is going to go, the title of this message, according to plan. It's going to happen the way He said. Whether you like it or not, it is going to happen exactly the way God said it. And number two, you have to understand that God's plan is all about His chosen people, Israel, and their holy city, Jerusalem. It's all about that. If you don't get that, you'll be confused in biblical prophecy, because you'll be thinking it's about us. And it ain't got anything to do with us. Now, we're going to get caught up in it, but this is all about God's people. In Daniel chapter 9, I'll preach these passages, but I just want to reference this passage just for your thoughts, okay? Daniel chapter 9, verse 24, the Bible says this. Daniel is in captivity. He's reading Jeremiah, and he's like, wait a minute. God has determined a 70-year captivity upon us. That 70 years is coming up. We're going to get out of captivity pretty soon. So we need to get ready, because we're getting ready to get out of captivity. And as he has a conversation with God about this, then God comes back and He tells him in Daniel chapter 9, He says this. He says 70 weeks, better translated 77s, because they're really years. He says 70 weeks are determined for your people and for your holy city, to finish the transgression, number one, to make an end of sins, number two, to make reconciliation for iniquity, number three, to bring in everlasting righteousness, number four, to seal up the vision and prophecy, number five, and to anoint the most holy, number six. In other words, God says, I want you to know that every ounce of this end time stuff is all about the nation of Israel and the holy city of Jerusalem. That's what it's about. So you need to pay attention to what's happening with the nation of Israel, what's happening in Jerusalem, what's happening to those people, to figure out where we're at on a biblical timeline. And we've got to look and see, is this kingdom that God has prophesied in the book of Daniel, do we see its rise? Can we see it anywhere? Because when you start to see the rise of this fourth kingdom, you can be assured that the end is coming. And are we seeing this? Now, I will tell you some things next, I don't have time, but I will tell you next week, I'm really going to point you to current, contemporary, right now events that are lining up, that we've never seen line up, things that have never happened in human history that are happening right now, that might indicate to you what I'm teaching you today, that this fourth kingdom is on the rise. This fourth kingdom is going to consume the entire world. See, you guys have heard for a long time, if you ever heard prophecy, you've heard people say, well, you know, they don't really see the United States of America in prophecy. I wonder why. It is not going to exist. Like, it's not going to exist. Now, we'll be here. People will be here. But the government of the United States of America will not exist. As a matter of fact, no government will exist except the government of the Antichrist. And he says so. Why we haven't figured that out yet? He's going to trample and conquer and break up the entire world, destroy every government across the entire world, and establish one single government under which he will lead, and we're not going to be one part of it other than we're going to be starving to death. I'll show you. I thought it was funny when I said I was going to do this. Oh, we're so excited on it. You probably won't be after next week. I'm going to show you some things next week about this nation, what's going on, what's happening across the globe that you probably haven't heard. You're probably not thinking about, but it's happening right now. Right now. Who would have ever dreamed that the United States of America, that the sitting president would cede away the sovereignty of this nation like that and never blink an eye? Who would have ever dreamed that? That's exactly what we're getting ready to do to the World Health Organization. So at their whim, they can quarantine our whole nation and take over. We are no longer going to be sovereign. So don't ask yourself, can it happen? It's happening in your face right now. I'll give you some of that next week. Scary stuff next week, in case you don't want to come. Hey, don't forget what God said, though. He said, but He gonna give the saints of the Most High. Oh, we get it all. We get it all, okay? So it's important that you see that, all right? So let me try to share, and if you're in the back, hey, back up to Habakkuk. Habakkuk is, again, I want to express some things to you that you may or may not know. The most significant days in the nation of Israel, sometimes we don't understand. If I was to ask the average person that's just been raised in church, they might think the crossing of the Red Sea or something like that, but it's not the case. If we were to think about significant days in the life of the United States, we would say July the 4th, 1776, whenever we declared our independence and we were constituted as a nation, right? That would be a big moment, and we celebrate it every year. We might remember in our lifetime 9/11. That was a big moment in the life of the United States of America. A big moment in the life of the world would be Y2K. Y'all remember Y2K? But we weren't sure. We didn't know if the computers were going to shut down and we were all going to starve to death. So prior to Y2K, guess what? We were all stocking. We had 4,000 rolls of toilet paper and paper towels and food and stuff like that stored away. We're building shelters underground that nobody knows about. And we got food rations all over the place. And then the clock turned and nothing happened. And so we're like, well, we're going to eat free this year because we need to eat all this food, right? So those were big days. The biggest day in the life of the nation of Israel was the Babylonian captivity. Which is the time whenever the nation of Israel, and I need to really change that because it's not really true. The Babylonian captivity could better be referenced as the time of the Gentiles. So often we talk about the time of the Gentiles being when the church was born, but that's not true. The nation of Israel was a sovereign nation. They operated on their own. They operated under God. They did the things they wanted to. They were a united kingdom when they first started out. You remember Samuel was the first one started calling out kings, and of course we had Saul that was a king, and then we had David that was a king, and we had Solomon that was a king. And under those three kings we were a united kingdom. But then after that, things started going south, and this kingdom of Israel that was one split. And when it split, we had two different iterations of this kingdom. One of them was the 10 tribes known as Israel, and one was Judah and Benjamin known as Judah. And Judah and Benjamin were the more righteous. Well, there were captivities, but there was a captivity over here with the 10 tribes, and when the 10 tribes went away, they're gone. Like, we don't know where they're at. They disappeared. The two tribes that went into Babylonian captivity were Judah and Benjamin, and they're the ones that we often call the nation of Israel, when in reality it's two tribes that are over there. And God used those two tribes as His remnant. He used the captivity of Babylon to get the idolatry out of them. When they came out on the other side, they were monotheistic. They were no longer polytheistic. They didn't worship a bunch of gods. They only worshiped one God, which is one of the reasons they can't accept Jesus. Because for God to be God and for Jesus to be God, that's two gods, that's polytheism. Been there, done that, got the t-shirt in Babylon, not planning on going back. That's why God the Father, God the Son, God, that's three. We can't do that. The Shema says, "Hear, O Lord, our God is one God." The Shema. They want to make sure that God knows they know there's only one, and so they struggle with the Trinity. It's one of the reasons the Jews have a hard time receiving Christ. And so he says, hey, this is a big deal. Now, there are prophets in the Bible, minor prophets, major prophets. All that means is the minor prophets are short books, the major prophets are long books. Some of them are prophesying before they go into captivity. Some are prophesying after they get out of captivity. Some are prophesying while they're in captivity. The two in captivity are Daniel and Ezekiel. And there's others that are before. One of the prophets that's prophesying before the captivity, trying to warn Israel, is the prophet Habakkuk. And Habakkuk is lamenting to God, how can this be? And God writes these words to Habakkuk. He says, look among the nations and watch and be utterly astounded, because I'm going to work a work in your days which you would not believe though it's told to you. For indeed I am raising up a wicked, vile, sinful, pagan nation of the Chaldeans, a bitter and a hasty nation which marches through the breadth of the earth to possess dwelling places that are not theirs. In other words, they're just coming through and stripping everybody out. They're terrible and they're dreadful. Their judgment and their dignity precede themselves. And so this is under King Nebuchadnezzar. And God's telling Habakkuk, listen, I've warned them, I've warned them, I've warned them, I've warned them. They've not listened, and therefore I am going to use as an instrument in my hand this wicked nation under King Nebuchadnezzar to go in there and just loot out Jerusalem and take all these people away. And that's exactly what happened. That's exactly what happened. They were in captivity for 70 years. While they're there, Daniel you know the story of Daniel, the Hebrew boys, the lions den, all that stuff. And Daniel starts to see, he does a dream for Nebuchadnezzar in Daniel chapter 2. And the dream that he sees is this big statue. You need to understand the statue. I'm going to do this real quick. He sees a statue. Nebuchadnezzar sees a statue. He can't figure out what it is. None of his people can tell him what it is. Daniel says he'll tell him. And Daniel comes and said, here's the interpretation of your dream. The statue that you see has a head of gold. That's you, King Nebuchadnezzar. God has given you this incredible kingdom. You're going to be a head of gold, pretty awesome, big-time kingdom. Nebuchadnezzar did great, except just a little bit of time he had to eat some grass and stuff because he thought he was God for a minute. God fixed that. And then he fixed that. And he said, no, your king, your God is the God of heaven. And so all that went okay. And then, and this is during Daniel's time. And he says, now, this next one of silver, the arms and the shoulders, there's another king, a lesser kingdom that's going to come in, and it's going to overthrow your kingdom, but you're going to be dead. And he was. And here he was talking about the Medes and the Persians. And that's exactly what happened. The interesting thing about Daniel is, Daniel says it's going to happen, and then years later it happens exactly like he said, with the exact people that he said it was going to happen, proving the veracity of Scripture. So the Medes and the Persians come. He says after that, there's going to be a brass kingdom, and it represents this part, the belly and stuff. There's going to be a brass kingdom, and in this brass kingdom, he was referring to the Greeks, and the Greeks were Alexander the Great, that he had this kingdom come in. And then he said the next kingdom, in the legs on this thing, they're made of iron. This is a very powerful, militant, crushing kingdom, and the Romans came in. Bye-bye, sweetheart. See ya. Love you, girl. All right. She's my honey right there, I'm telling you. So they got this kingdom that's coming in. It's going to be the Romans, and these Romans are going to come in. They're going to crush everything. And in fact, they did. And then he said, there's one other piece of that, and it's the feet. And it has toes of iron and clay. It has toes of iron and clay because the strength of iron is going to be in there. In other words, the strength of Rome is going to be in there. But there's also going to be a mixture of something else that's in there. It's going to be a kingdom unlike the others because it's mixed, and there's some challenges in there. It's going to be brought about by the seed of men, meaning that there's going to be marriages and mixed races and stuff that are going to be in there, but they don't really stick together. They can go together, they can stand beside each other, but they're not united. This is not a united kingdom like all the other kingdoms. So it's going to be a mixture of stuff that's going to go in. And he said, during that time, there's a great mountain that's going to come down, and this great mountain represents Christ. Christ is going to come in, smash the feet during these kingdoms, and this kingdom that Christ is going to bring is going to be happening during the time of these kingdoms. He's going to smash the feet of this kingdom here with the toes, with the iron and the clay. He's going to establish a kingdom that will last forever and ever and ever. And so we see that great picture. Nebuchadnezzar's pretty happy because he knows that he's going to make it. And then time goes on. Nebuchadnezzar dies. Belshazzar takes his place. And so then Daniel has a vision. And as he has this vision, he has a vision of these great beasts that are coming out of the sea. And as he sees this beast coming out of the sea, they show themselves in different animals that come out of the sea. And he's bothered. He's deeply bothered by this vision, which we already read. And he's like, tell me about it. Tell me about it. And then after that in chapter 8, I'm not going to talk about that today, just to say he sees a ram coming up. It's got a couple of horns on it. Then a horn comes out, got eyes, mouth, and stuff like that. And once again, he's focusing on that fourth kingdom. Well, what we got to look at today is on this fourth kingdom, what is it? And what does it look like? And what do we need to know so that I can hopefully help you in the future? Let me say this, and I've already destroyed them in the back. They're like, we have no idea what he's doing. It's cool. He's telling us on this fourth kingdom, or these kingdoms, he's saying, here's what's going on. Israel was a sovereign nation, and when they went into Babylonian captivity, it was the first time that they went under the times of the Gentiles or Gentile rule. The nation of Israel has been under Gentile rule since the Babylonian captivity. Ruled on Babylon, ruled in Medo-Persia, ruled under Greece, ruled under Rome. And even to this day, even though they've reestablished in their homeland, they are under rule again by another Gentile kingdom. This is the time of the Gentiles. This fourth kingdom will be the last time that the nation of Israel is ever under bondage. They will be released and rule and reign for good. That's coming. So God says, hey, I want you to know something about the end times. It's about my people and it's about my city. It's about my people, it's about my city. And you need to understand that. We, on the other hand, we're so enamored with the rapture, we never even thought about the Israelites. We haven't thought about Jerusalem. We haven't thought about the Jews. We're just thinking, hey, we get to fly out of here one day and everything's going to be fine. No, God's got some things going on. Remember what God said. Here's what God said. He said, the coming of the Son of Man is going to be just like in the days of Noah. What did he mean by that? I kind of touched on it, but let me expand that just a little bit. There are two narratives that are going on in the world then. Imagine, I want you to just picture in your mind that here's Noah. God said, Noah, hey, things are bad, and I'm going to destroy the planet. But I'm not going to just destroy the planet. I'm going to make a way of escape for anybody that wants to come in, and you invite everybody, okay? And not just all the people, but I'm also going to make room for the animals because I'm not done. So we're going to go repopulate. Not done. So here's Noah, and he's over here. He's building a boat, and he's not building a boat in the harbor. He's building a boat up on the high ground. And he's telling people, hey, God is going to destroy the world, and you're all going to die. He's going to destroy it by rain, to which they're like, what's rain? It's never rained before. Water's going to come out of the sky. I can see him. Noah has got hold of the wacky weed. You know they were saying something like that. And he's like, no, I'm telling you, God told me that this was going to happen, but there's plenty of room for you and you can get in here. And God's over here saying, hey, this is what I'm doing. So God's got a narrative about, I want righteousness in the world. I'm not going to put up with this unrighteousness. I'm going to destroy the unrighteousness, but I'm going to keep the righteous people, and I'm going to save them through a boat, and anybody who wants to get on the boat can go. So here's this narrative. But over here, there's another narrative, and it is, eat, drink, be merry, let's get married, divorce, have fun, enjoy ourselves. Who's God? There ain't no God, that man's crazy. That's a narrative. And they're completely mutually exclusive. God said that's exactly how it's going to be in these latter days. So over here, God says, hey, I just want y'all to know, wrote it in the book, not just in Daniel, but in a lot of other places. I've written in the book what I'm doing, and what I'm doing is working on my chosen people, Israel. Now, you guys get to come on in, because you're the wild olive branch that's going to come in, but you better pay attention to Israel and look at what I'm doing with them. So I'm over here working on them. You know, they got to the place where they were idolatrous. I got the idolatry out of them, but they still haven't faced Jesus yet. I'm going to get Jesus in. I want to use you Gentiles to make them jealous so they'll come to Jesus. How many of us have made a Jew jealous enough to come to Jesus when that's actually our responsibility? Romans chapter 9. Because see, God's got this narrative, and our narrative is, I need my Facebook, I need my Instagram, I need my Twitter, I need to figure out ways to make money on YouTube, I got to go get on American Idol or The Voice or something like that. I need to find myself famous somewhere. I need to buy this new house. I need the new car. Looking forward to put my retirement away and stuff like that. And God's like, y'all aren't paying any attention. Y'all are paying no attention to the narrative I've got going on. I've told you what's happening, and I'm showing you what's happening, and you're not paying attention. You're not paying attention. And here's what's going to happen to you. You're going to get caught unaware. You're going to get caught unaware. One's going to be grinding at the mill, two be grinding at the mill. One's going to be taken, one's going to be left behind. You're not paying attention. He says, just like in the days of Noah, they weren't paying any attention until the day that the rains fell and the door was shut, and then it was too late. So he says, I'm telling you straight up what's getting ready to happen. So as he explains these beasts, let me see if I can help you understand what they are. So he gives the vision of the four beasts and also the king that's called the little horn. And so these four beasts, the lion, the bear, the leopard, that is Babylon, Medo-Persia, and Greece. And then the 10 horned beasts that come out of Rome, the Romans. That hasn't happened yet. We haven't seen that yet, but it's happening. That first beast symbolizes the Babylonian Empire under Nebuchadnezzar. The second one, the king of Medo-Persia, Cyrus and Xerxes. The third beast is the Grecian Empire, Alexander the Great. And the last and most terrifying is that last kingdom under the times of the Gentiles. The beast with the 10 horns is there's going to come a moment where right now, currently today, here's what you got to understand. Currently today, there's 193 nations across the world. The end-time kingdom that's going to take over is 10 of those. It's not all 193. It's 10. That little horn is going to rise up. 3 out of those 10 are going to be problematic for him, so he's going to overrule the 3 or eliminate them. The 3. I have a pretty good idea who those 3 are. He's going to eliminate them. There's going to be 7. And he's going to rule over them, and he's going to rule from those 7. That's what he wants to do. So as this little beast comes to power, he starts to take over. And the clarifying marks of him in verse 25 are that he is a known blasphemer of God. And that's what people are going to love about him. It says he's going to speak pompous words against the Most High, and he's going to persecute the saints of the Most High, and he's going to intend to change the times and the law. So this guy right here has some very specific things that he's after. The very first thing that he's after is to make sure that he belittles our God. And he's going to be given privilege to belittle our God. Say all manner of things about God, all kinds of lies about God, everything that we shouldn't enjoy or listen to, but he's going to do it. And he's going to do it very convincingly and overwhelmingly. This past week, I don't know if you saw it, but Joe Biden said that abortion was actually authorized by God. He said that. What? I don't really care about your political affiliation. That's stupid. I mean, it just is. That's just stupid. That God said kill them? Come on. And so you wonder, how does this stuff happen? How does it happen? It's happening right now. Have y'all filled up with gas? I filled up with gas this morning. Andy was going to come here today. Today's my birthday. Thank you. Mike praised me for the 70 years I've been on earth. I'm not 70. Andy was going to come to church for my birthday, but I had to leave him at the gas station. I said, how much is it? Your firstborn. Actually, he's at the hospital with Terry watching over her until I can get there. So, if you really look at it, and there's some things I need to tell you about gas next week. But it's like he's coming here to blaspheme the name of God and to persecute the people of God. So you better get ready. Now, I'm kind of one of those people that if you want to persecute me, persecute me. You ain't got to like me. You don't even have to come here. You don't have to listen to anything. But dadgummit, this is God's house. And we don't make adjustments because y'all don't like it. You know what? Why would we do that? Why would we do that? Somebody asked me this, that after all the struggle you've gone through with your wife, are you going to quit? Where am I going? If I were to quit, where does that leave me? Now that leaves me with nobody. You know what I mean? That's just dumb. It's just dumb. I don't know where the thinking comes from. But he says he's going to persecute the people of God. He's going to blaspheme the name of God. And heaven help us. He said he's going to change the times and the law. Oh, you don't even know what that means. What's going to happen? And we're talking about not the laws of the United States. There's not going to be a United States. He's going to change the laws of the world. He's going to establish the laws of the world. What do you think they're doing right now? It would shock you what we've already given away in terms of our sovereignty. Behind the scenes, what's been given away. You'd be amazed. I'm going to share a little bit with you next week. But he's going to change some things. And right now, you guys enjoy. For all of you who are so boisterous and we have the freedom, we have the right, there's coming a day you're not going to, and you're going to be in trouble. But he's going to change all that kind of stuff. This is what he's doing. And the Bible tells us in the book of 1 Thessalonians, he says, hey, I want you to know something. Even though none of this has been seen yet, even though the Antichrist hasn't been revealed yet, even though you haven't seen all this, I want you to know that the mystery of iniquity is already at work, even though you haven't seen it yet. But it's happening, and we can identify what that is. But the biggest issue is, as we look at this fourth kingdom and we look at this little horn, and he's not going to show himself for a while, but so I'm not looking at the little horn. I'll tell you about him, but I'm looking at this 10-nation coalition that is the rise of the fourth kingdom. That's what's going to help us understand where we're at. Is there any possibility that it is here now? I will tell you next week. I don't have time. I mean, I'm not trying to hold you in suspense, but I don't have time to go in because I need to give you some very clear things for you to see. Why? Because I need y'all to get ready. I need you to get ready. Here's what I'm going to tell you. There's coming a day that Elon Musk is going to have the same amount of money that I got. He's going to be as broke as me because of what's getting ready to happen. And it is in the works right now. Right now. It's happening right now. I think we're about that close. Nobody knows the day nor the hour. We're close. I need to tell you how. And then the bigger question is, how then should we live in light of these facts? How should we live? And the Bible teaches us in these latter days there's going to be a falling away from the church. And I'm not sure if that means attendance, but I can tell you this. There's a falling away from the purity of the written Word of God. The numbers of so-called believers that sometimes email me, call me, text me, confront me, and I was like, yeah, what the Bible says is, yeah, but. No, there's no yeah, but. There is no yeah, but. I said it last week. The Bible said he made them male and female. Yeah, but. There's no yeah, but. There's no yeah, but there. You're being cruel. No, I'm being truthful. I'm being honest. I'm trying to warn you. Because there's coming a time when I'm telling you that God says, I am going to use this fourth kingdom to crush everything. And He's going to. And it's forming up. As a matter of fact, it's already formed. It hasn't manifested yet. But it's forming up right now, and we need to get ready. Here's what encourages me. God says we're going to undergo a bit of persecution. You know, in America, we're persecuted whenever, I don't know, you didn't call me the right name or something. I don't know. You looked at me cross-eyed. I'm not sure what it is, but we're so fragile. We're very fragile, very, very fragile. Our feelings are hurt so rapidly. You don't even know what persecution is yet. I'm telling you, it's coming, and it's not going to be easy. But if you can stand up to it, God says, for those who stands up, He's going to give us the kingdom, the whole thing forever and ever and ever and ever and ever. So there's going to come a hard time, but then there'll be some good times past it. And God says, as the people of God, He's looking for a people of God who will stand in that day. I don't want you to be caught unaware. I don't want you to be caught off guard. Here's what I will tell you. You ain't got to believe a word I say. Go back and read Daniel chapter 2. Go back and read Daniel chapter 7. Read Daniel chapter 8. Read Daniel chapter 9. Start figuring out what exactly he's talking about here, and you will discover very, very clearly that this is about the nation of Israel and the holy city of Jerusalem. That's what it's all about. God does not look real favorably on nations who don't bless His people, Israel. God doesn't look very favorably whenever He's trying to work with the holy city and the United States of America is trying to help slice it in two. He doesn't look very favorably on that. That's why I've been in Washington and I advocate for the nation of Israel. I'm actually advocating for us. And they're getting less and less and less and less support. And somebody's like, well, we shouldn't have. You just don't know your Bible. God doesn't look favorably on those that don't look favorably on His people. And of course, we already know what the Scriptures teach us. Every single nation on planet Earth is going to turn against the nation of Israel, including the United States of America, which will be our final demise. And we're close. We're already doing it now. We're already doing it now. This current administration has already made that decision. I'm not trying to be political. I'm being honest. Being honest. They've decided to do it. So guys, as you think through this, look for the rise of the fourth kingdom. It is not on our soil. It is in Europe, over there. Be looking for it. It's different. It's different than every other kingdom that has ever been. It's different according to the Scriptures. And I'll show you what it looks like next week. I realize I've given you a lot. I didn't give you much of an outline to follow, but you can download it and see everything that's on there. But I just want you to grasp this reality of how are we going to know and how close are we? And is this the generation? Let me just leave you with one final thought. I probably wouldn't be nearly as convinced as I am if it were not for the nation of Israel. Whether you know it or not, Israel was eliminated or they were overthrown in AD 70. They destroyed the temple just as Jesus said. Remember when Jesus said, hey guys, see this beautiful temple that they've been spending decades and decades to build? There's not going to be one stone left upon another. It's all going to be ripped down. And the Romans came through and they did. There was gold in between the stones, and so they did all that out. They burnt the whole thing down, toppled all the stones to get all the precious metals that they could out of there, and they completely and utterly destroyed the temple exactly as He said. That's why there is no temple in Jerusalem right now, because they took the whole thing out. The Mosque of Omar sits over the Dome of the Rock right now, which is that's the Palestinians. And so that's where they're at. And we want that back. The Jews want that back, and God's going to give it back to them. But for 1,900 years, Israel did not exist. Most recently, the areas that were over there that was Israel was the Ottoman Empire. And we may or may not remember that, but you may have just been born and Israel's always been there, so you just assume it's been there since the days of Jesus. It has not. Israel came back into existence in 1948, and that was a major earthquake in the theological world, because when Israel went away and there was no Israel, theologians said, well, if there's no Israel, none of this stuff can be interpreted this way. Then Israel came back and they're like, uh-oh, we've messed up. Well, too many books written, so we're going to leave it. You can't leave it. Israel got here in 1948, the clock started ticking on that moment when they were reconstituted as a nation. And now what we've seen since then, oh yeah, we rolling. We are rolling. But I need to attach it to current events for you to see it. And I promise you I'll do that next week.